Okay, let's talk about tariffs and let's solve a lot of misconceptions about tariffs. The first thing is this: a tariff is a tax on an imported good, and the value of that imported good isn't known until it's landed and it's paid for by the importer. That means the tariff is paid by the person who imports it. So, if you have an organization that's building cars and they're based in America and they're importing some parts that go into the cars, they pay for the tariff, not the country sending it, not the organization sending it. Okay, so how does that work then? So if you're importing something and it costs $100 a unit and there's now a 30% tariff on it, that means when it lands in the country, you've paid that supplier $100, but now you have to pay an extra $30. That's a tariff. As we know, that's something that's been increased and imposed by the US government. So if you're a US organization with those new tariffs, you have to pay that extra 30%, and that goes to the US government. Now, that product you got in for $100 an item, it's now $130 an item, and say you were selling it at $200. Your margin has now reduced from $100 to $70. You need to make a decision. Can your business operate with a margin reduction of that size? And if it can't, if that means you will lose more money, say your organization, it costs your organization $80 to sell that item. When you sold it at, $200, you were making $20. But now, selling it at $200 and costing you $130, it's only going to make you $70 and it costs you $80 to sell it. So you're going to lose money unless you pass that tariff, that increase, on to your customers. So now that item that you were selling for $200 is now $230. And that's why tariffs increase prices, and that's why tariffs increase inflation. Now, there's an argument that the companies themselves that are exporting the product, they will be paying the tariffs. By and large, that's false. But there are circumstances where that's true. So, imagine you are selling a component, you're exporting it at $100, and it's landing with the importer in the US, and they are selling it for $300. And the next best competitive or competition to your product is an American-made one, and it's been sold for $400. Now, with your 30% tariff on selling your $100 item, which is then been sold for $300 against competition of $400, and the reason why you're selling it, the US importer is selling it at $300 is because that's enough of a differentiation. American consumers are looking at these two products and going, well, I can spend $400 on the American one, but I can spend $300 on the overseas one. And they're making a decision to go on the overseas one, where if that $300 was closer, say it became $390 now because of the tariffs, $390 versus $400, then you're going to see a shift in the market. You're going to see more US buyers willing to pay the extra $10 to get the American item. Still inflation, because what was going to be spent at the $300 mark is now the $400 mark. But this is where the importer or the supplier might be paying the tariff. Because of that extreme margin in the circumstance, so someone's selling something for $100, the importer's selling it at $300, because they need to maintain that price differentiation and they've got huge margins, only in that circumstance you might have the seller still sell it at 100, but the importer goes, no, we're going to absorb the the tariff. So it costs them now $130 to land, but they can still sell it at $300. The $170 margin is okay. They can absorb that. Conversely, what you might have, if you imagine now that the producer that's overseas is selling it for $200 and it's landing within the US with the tariff now on $260, selling it for $300, that margin's wafer thin. But because the person producing it and exporting it is selling it at $200, and say it only cost them, as an extreme, $50 to produce. Now they might say, well, look, we can bring back our price because we know if we keep it at $200 and it hits the shelves at $390 at the end of the day versus a $400 American product, we won't sell anything. So then the producer might go, well, look, instead of selling it to you at $200, and only they know this, that they produce it at $50 as an internal cost, they might be able to say, well, look, we can sell it to you now for $150, and that will take care of all of the tariffs. So when it lands with you, as the US importer, it's still costing you $200. So that will happen if two things are in play. If price differentiation is super important to maintain the market share of the selling of that product, and if there's excessive margin in it by the producer as they're selling it. But again, what might take away from that is if the American market becomes so, the appetite is reduced for someone to export to it, and if many other countries start to band together and have more free trade agreements between them, then the supplier, rather than supplying to the States, might want to supply to other countries. We might see that. So recently, and when I say recently, at the time of this recording, in the last 48 hours, the response to the American tariffs by China, Japan, and South Korea, they have decided to have a coordinated response. So we'll see what happens there. So in some circumstances, some prices will increase. I say some, it's really going to be most, if not all. And in some circumstances, some prices, and when I say some, I mean very few, won't change. Either way, if some don't change and most do change, you will still have inflation occur in the States. And then, with the American suppliers selling domestically to the American market, for which tariffs do not affect them, they can choose whether they still want to increase their prices. There might be an opportunity to do that, and they might find increasing their price by 20% in line with the tariff of their competition might decrease demand for their product by 10%. So overall, it might be better for them. So you might see some domestic producers also increasing their price, which will be inflationary pressures. We'll see what happens there. But those are tariffs, and that's how they work. So it's wrong to say that all the prices are going to be passed on to the consumer, but it's completely wrong to say that it is the producer of the product from the foreign country that will be paying the tariff. That is completely untrue unless, no, let's be clear, all importers will be paying the tariff. All importers in the United States will be paying the tariff. But some of those importers might get a break where the exporters might want to reduce their pricing. And it's only under that circumstance that prices might not go up for some products. That won't be a frequent circumstance. So there's a whole bunch of things at play here, but we know prices will go up. The only way they won't go up is if no one increases their prices and either the suppliers by default or the importers absorb all of the tariffs. That will never happen. So prices will go up. It's to the extent that they will go up on the mix of the market that I've talked about. Balance of probability, high probability that all tariffs or most tariffs, and when I say most, we're probably talking 90% plus, will get passed on to the American domestic consumer. Are there other factors in play here? Yeah, absolutely. Environmentally, it might be a very good thing, because rather than someone buying 10 items with their 100 US dollars, now they might only be able to afford 8 items and it will still cost them the 100 US dollars. So consumption rates will reduce. With consumption rates, transportation rates, cartage, shipping will also reduce. So the greenhouse gases that we consume to ship and move these products, those will also reduce. Another thing in play here is I can't help to think that this was a backward step in terms of trying to bring back to USA old practices of manufacturing, especially when I hear about the automotive industry, and the automotive industry that's based on fossil fuel powered cars. Why on earth you'd want to bring that back as opposed to supporting new industries that are coming through? So why bring back the manufacture of old technology when you can focus on building the manufacture of new technology within, for United States' case, within their borders? But up to them. Some of this thinking, some of the manufacturing you want to bring back into the States, I think it's 1980s, 1990s sort of thinking. Don't bring the old technology back. How do we furnish, support, and grow the manufacture of new technologies? Another one is that the US is losing friends. And when you lose friends and alliances, it is costly on the security front and it's costly on the trade front. Remember, when your balance of trade is such that with your relationship with any particular country where you're importing more than you export into that country, that means more resources are coming into your country than are leaving your country. And that's healthy in some cases. So to take a blanket approach and say that that's not healthy, you're playing a dangerous game. And certainly when you do that with those you have strong alliances with, so with the United States, there's lots of different types of alliances. So you have the Five Eyes, so that alliance between the United States, the UK, Canada, Australia, and New Zealand, to just talk about one. When you start to attack all of those countries in that alliance, and I use the word attack because none of this has been negotiated. It's been thrust upon. So what's been done to Mexico and Canada, the two countries that border the United States, it's been done to them. It's not, Canada and Mexico have not been involved in a negotiation process with this. And of course, in any negotiation process, well, I'd like to think you're looking for the win-wins. The if-then scenario. If you're able to do this, then we can do that. And if we do this for you, then you'll be able to do that. So you're looking for the win-wins. So there's those other elements in play. There's the alliances and the burning of friendships and those alliances going on at the moment. There's the types of manufacturing. Are you bringing back the wrong and the aged elements of manufacturing? Are you bringing back products you really don't want to be investing in and manufacturing in US? And I'd say fossil fuel power cars is something, why would you want to touch that with a barge pole? And there are some elements around the environmental side, which might reduce consumption. Why is it affecting the markets? That example I gave you, where someone, instead of spending $100 and getting 10 products, they're spending $100 and getting 8 products. That might be, instead of 10 products across 10 different companies, it's now 8 products across 8 different companies. So 2 companies are missing out on the sale of their products. So it's disproportionately going to affect different industries. When we look at our basic needs, which is housing, clothing, food, those things will always have money spent on them. The more luxurious sort of items, the non-necessities, those are the things that disproportionately might see a real drop-off, and it's going to affect some organisations. And of course, when organisations sell less and they make less, then they're less appealing to invest in as an investor, and your chance of investing in those organisations is through the share market, the stock market. Another thing too is when we talk about American companies like Apple and like Nike, what makes them American? And I'm not being facetious. What I'm saying is those are publicly owned companies. So when you look at who owns those companies, it's split up across millions of people and investment funds across the world. I own a lot of shares in a lot of American companies through the investment funds that I have some money in. Those companies are not wholly American. They haven't been for a long time. They're owned by lots of people and lots of organizations all over the world, having a share in that organization. So yeah, I'm certainly not here to say that tariffs are wrong. What I'm here to say is these are the ramifications of the tariffs that are in, and I can't see any good coming out of them. Probably the single best thing that might be coming out of it, if you to put it on a balance sheet and say what are all the bad things and what are all the good things, all the good things is probably a singular thing, and it's just environmental impact. It's probably going to be better for the environment through reduced consumption. But everything else seems to be falling in the bad thing. But this video is not about that debate. This is about understanding tariffs and how they work, and why some people are saying they'll have inflationary pressures. Some people are saying that they won't. They're both wrong because they're taking a particular view of a particular event and extrapolating that across the whole market. So I hope that clears a lot of stuff up. And I hope that makes you a bit smarter than your mates when you talk about this. All right, keep watching what's going on with the tariffs. There's going to be a lot of stuff happening. Where's it going to go? Who knows? Any questions, throw them in the comments. I'll try and help. None of this, of course, is any financial advice. Who knows what to invest where from this point on. Though there's a lot of investment in gold. Seems to hold its value. It's quite stable. And that's why you'll hear that gold prices are going up as the share market drops. People are selling their investments in shares and investing it in gold. Is the share market going to go down further? Again, not financial advice. If I was to guess, I'd say absolutely. At the time of recording, the United States stock market is about to open for its Friday trading, and we're going to see it go down. That's my prediction. That's my prediction. Not financial advice, just my prediction in terms of what's going to happen next. All right. Hope that helps. Take care. Catch you in the next one. Bye.